Story disclaimer. This story is a work of fiction and is intended for entertainment purposes only. The content includes dark themes, horror elements, and fictional depictions of rituals and sacrifices that are purely imaginative and not reflective of any real-life practices or beliefs. Viewer discretion is advised. This video is not suitable for younger audiences, and parental guidance is recommended. The story does not endorse or promote any harmful behavior, violence, or dangerous activities. Please note that all characters, events, and settings are entirely fictional and created for the purpose of storytelling. Any resemblance to actual persons, living or dead, or actual events, is purely coincidental. In the bustling 21st century African city of Kisa, Juma is an ordinary young man with big dreams of wealth and success. But when he makes a mysterious pact with a dark force, he quickly realizes that riches come with a terrifying price. As he rises to power, sinister forces begin to close in, and Juma is thrust into a dangerous world of ancient cults, dark magic, and twisted secrets. With the shadows of the abyss looming over him, Juma must decide whether he can escape the grip of the pact or be consumed by the darkness forever. What happens when a deal with the devil threatens everything he holds dear? Watch this epic tale filled with suspense, shocking twists, and dark magic unfold. But remember, wealth always comes at a cost. If you're ready for a thrilling story that will keep you on the edge of your seat, hit subscribe, give this video a thumbs up, and don't forget to share with friends who love a gripping adventure. In the heart of the bustling city of Juma, a place known for its lively markets and warm, golden sunsets, there lived a man named Juma. Juma was not wealthy, but he was kind, hardworking, and well-liked by his neighbors. He spent his days repairing shoes in the corner of a crowded street, dreaming of something more, a life of prosperity and ease. Deep down, Juma believed that no matter how hard he worked, true success would never come to him. One evening, as the shadows of the night began to stretch across the streets, Juma noticed a stranger standing nearby. This man was unlike anyone he had ever seen. He wore a dark, flowing cloak and seemed to melt into the evening shadows. His eyes gleamed with a strange, captivating light, and his voice, when he spoke, was as smooth as silk. "Juma," the stranger said softly, though his voice seemed to echo in the quiet of the night, "I know what you desire. I can give you everything, riches, power, anything your heart longs for." Juma's heart skipped a beat. He had never told anyone about his deepest desires, yet here was this man offering him all he had ever wanted. "Who are you?" Juma asked, his voice shaky. The man smiled, though it didn't quite reach his eyes. "I am someone who can make your dreams come true. All I ask in return is something you won't even miss." Juma hesitated. He had heard stories about pacts with mysterious beings, deals that never ended well. But the idea of living in wealth, leaving behind his life of struggle, was tempting, too tempting. "What do you want from me?" Juma asked cautiously. "Nothing now," the man replied with a sly grin. "Just a promise. A promise that, when the time comes, you will listen to me. In return, you will have everything you've ever wanted. Wealth beyond your wildest imagination. You will be respected and loved by all." Juma thought about it. A life of ease sounded perfect. What could be the harm in a simple promise? He was tired of fixing shoes and scraping by. He wanted more. "I agree," Juma said finally, his voice barely above a whisper. The man stepped closer, his eyes gleaming. "Then it is done," he said, as a faint, cold wind swirled around them. In that moment, Juma felt a strange shiver crawl up his spine, but he pushed the feeling aside. He shook the man's hand, sealing the deal. The very next morning, things began to change. His shoe repair business flourished overnight. People came from all over Juma, lining up to have their shoes fixed. Money flowed in, and soon, Juma found himself opening a grand shop in the center of the city. His newfound wealth brought him fame, and before long, he was living in a grand house, dining with the most important people in the city. But as the days turned into weeks, and weeks into months, a strange unease crept into Juma's mind. He couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching him, waiting. The mysterious man had disappeared, but Juma knew, deep in his heart, that the deal he had made was not yet complete. As the sun set over the city one fateful evening, a familiar cold breeze drifted through Juma's lavish home. And in the shadows, the stranger appeared once more. "It's time," the man whispered, his voice sending chills down Juma's spine. Juma's heart pounded in his chest. He had everything he wanted, but now he realized he might have to give up more than he bargained for. Juma stared at the man, his once calm life now unraveling. "What do you mean, it's time?" he asked, his voice trembling with fear. The man's smile was cold. "Did you think wealth and success would come without a cost? Everything comes at a price, Juma. You've enjoyed your riches, but now it's time to fulfill your part of the deal." Juma's mind raced. He had hoped that day would never come, that the mysterious figure would disappear from his life forever. But deep down, he had always known the deal would resurface. "What do you want from me?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. The man's eyes glowed with a dark intensity. "Nothing you will miss, Juma. But you must come with me tonight. There is a task for you, and only you can do it." Juma's heart raced. He didn't want to follow this man, didn't want to know what was waiting for him in the shadows. But something deep inside pulled him toward the door. "Do not be afraid," the man said smoothly. "It is a simple task. And after tonight, you will never see me again. You will be free." Juma hesitated, but the promise of freedom tempted him. With a heavy heart, he followed the man into the night. The streets of Njiwa seemed darker than usual as they walked through narrow alleys and twisted roads. The man led Juma to an old, abandoned building on the outskirts of the city, where the air felt thick with tension. Inside, there were no lights, only shadows that flickered like whispers around them. In the center of the room stood an ancient-looking table, and on it lay an old book bound in dark leather. The man gestured toward it. "Your task is simple," he said. "Read the words aloud." Juma stepped forward, the cold air biting at his skin. The book looked ordinary, but as soon as he opened it, he felt something dark and powerful stir in the air around him. The words on the pages were written in a language he didn't understand, but somehow, he knew what they meant. With trembling hands, he began to read. As the words left his lips, the room seemed to come alive. The walls shook, and a deep, guttural sound rumbled from beneath the ground. Juma's heart raced as he continued reading, the air around him growing heavier with each word. Suddenly, the floor beneath him cracked open, revealing a swirling darkness that seemed to reach out toward him. Juma stepped back, terrified. The man watched with a satisfied smile. "You've done well, Juma. Your part is almost complete." Juma's fear turned to dread. He knew that whatever he had just unleashed, it was far from over. Juma returned to his grand home, shaken to the core. He couldn't stop thinking about the ancient book, the words he had spoken, and the swirling darkness he had unleashed. His once peaceful life was now overshadowed by fear. Days passed, and while Juma's wealth continued to grow, he found no peace. He began to notice strange things happening around him, shadows that moved on their own, whispers in the dark, and an eerie presence that seemed to follow him wherever he went. One evening, as Juma sat alone in his lavish living room, the familiar cold breeze swept through the room. The man appeared once again, his eyes gleaming with satisfaction. "It's done," the man said. "You've set things in motion, and soon, you will have what you desire most, power beyond your wildest dreams." Juma's stomach churned. "But what have I done? What did those words mean? What is happening to me?" The man's smile widened. You've opened a door, Juma. A door that leads to power and riches, but also to things far darker than you can imagine. You have summoned something, and now it is coming. Juma's heart pounded in his chest. What have I summoned? The man's voice dropped to a whisper. You'll see soon enough. Juma could barely sleep. Each night, his grand home felt more like a prison, and the shadows that once offered him comfort now seemed to watch him with unseen eyes. The whispers grew louder, filling the silence with their haunting presence. Every time Juma tried to close his eyes, he could hear them calling his name, laughing in the dark, and reminding him of the pact he had made. Days passed, and though Juma's wealth increased, the darkness surrounding him grew thicker. He felt as though he was being suffocated by his own success. He had everything he had ever dreamed of: money, respect, and power. But none of it mattered anymore. Something was wrong. Very wrong. One night, after tossing and turning in his bed, Juma decided he had had enough. He grabbed his coat and rushed out into the cool night air. The streets of Njiwa were quiet, the usual hustle and bustle replaced by an eerie stillness. Juma wandered aimlessly, his mind clouded with fear and uncertainty. What had he done? Was there any way to escape this nightmare? As he walked through the dark streets, he felt a presence behind him. It was subtle at first, but soon the hairs on the back of his neck stood up. He turned around quickly but saw nothing, just the empty streets and the distant sound of the wind. But then, out of the corner of his eye, he saw it, a shadow moving unnaturally fast, darting between buildings and alleyways. Juma's heart raced. He wasn't alone. Who's there? He called out, his voice shaky. No answer. Just silence. Suddenly, the familiar cold breeze swept through the street, and Juma felt a chill run down his spine. He didn't need to look. He knew who it was. The man in the cloak appeared out of the shadows, his eyes glowing with a sinister light. You feel it, don't you? The man whispered. The presence you summoned, it's getting closer. Juma swallowed hard. What do you want from me? Haven't I done enough? The man smiled, a slow and eerie grin that made Juma's skin crawl. Enough. You've only just begun, Juma. The power you seek comes with a price. And that price is far greater than you could have imagined. Juma shook his head, backing away. I don't want this anymore. I don't care about the riches. Take it all back. But the man's smile only widened. Oh, Juma, it's far too late for that. With a wave of his hand, the man vanished into the night, leaving Juma standing alone in the street. But the shadow, the dark, swirling presence, remained. It lingered, watching, waiting. And Juma knew that whatever it was coming for him. In the days that followed, Juma couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong with him, something deeper than the eerie presence in his home. He avoided the mirror, too afraid to face what he might see in his own reflection. But one morning, as he washed his face, his eyes accidentally caught a glimpse of his arm in the mirror. There, just below his wrist, was a mark. It was faint at first, like a shadowy bruise, but it was unmistakably growing darker. It was shaped like an ancient symbol, one he had never seen before. His heart pounded as he stared at it, horrified. It pulsed with an unnatural energy, and he could feel it burning beneath his skin. Panicking, Juma rushed to cover it with his sleeve. But the mark had a life of its own. Each day, it grew darker, spreading further up his arm. No matter how much he tried to hide it, the mark refused to stay hidden. Juma sought help from the city's best healers, hoping they could explain the mysterious mark. But no one could. They looked at him with puzzled expressions, some even backing away in fear, as though they sensed something was deeply wrong. The whispers returned, louder now. They followed Juma wherever he went, echoing his name, reminding him of the dark power he had called upon. He couldn't escape it. The mark, the whispers, and the shadows, everything was closing in around him. Late one night, unable to take it anymore, Juma decided to confront the man who had caused all of this. He would find him, make him undo whatever curse had been placed upon him. Juma ventured into the same abandoned building where he had first read from the ancient book. The air was thick with the same dark energy, and the shadows seemed to move on their own. In the center of the room, the book still lay on the table, untouched since that fateful night. As Juma stepped forward, the shadows shifted, and from the darkness emerged the cloaked man, his smile cold and cruel. "Did you really think you could escape your fate, Juma?" the man asked softly. Juma's voice trembled. "I want out. I never wanted this. Please, undo it." The man chuckled. "Undo it? Juma, you are bound by your own words. The mark you carry is the sign of the Pact. You cannot run from it, and you cannot hide. You've unleashed something far greater than you understand." Juma's heart sank as the weight of his actions settled upon him. He had made a terrible mistake. And now there was no way out. As the days wore on, the mark on Juma's arm continued to spread, and the whispers in his head grew louder, more insistent. It was no longer just a presence watching him from the shadows, it had become part of him. The darkness was inside him now, feeding off his fear and despair. Every night, he dreamt of the same thing, a vast, dark ocean, swirling with shadowy figures that reached out for him, whispering his name, pulling him deeper into the abyss. He would wake up drenched in sweat, his heart pounding in his chest, and the mark on his arm throbbing with an unnatural heat. Juma knew he was running out of time. Whatever he had summoned, whatever dark force was at play, it was growing stronger. And soon, it would come for him. Desperate, Juma sought out the wisest elders in Juma, hoping someone, anyone, could help him. He went to the city's most revered spiritual leader, an old woman named Bibi Naima, known for her wisdom and connection to the ancient ways. If anyone could help him, it was her. Bibi Naima listened to Juma's story with grave concern. Her eyes narrowed as she examined the mark on his arm, and when she spoke, her voice was low and serious. "You have done something very dangerous, Juma," she said. "The mark you bear is not just a symbol, it is a gateway. A door to something far darker than you can imagine. And once that door is opened, it cannot be easily closed." Juma's heart sank. "But there must be a way to stop it. Please, I don't want this." Bibi Naima shook her head sadly. "The darkness you have unleashed is ancient, older than any of us. You cannot undo what has been done. But there may be a way to protect yourself, if you are willing to face the consequences." "What do I need to do?" Juma asked, his voice trembling. Bibi Naima's gaze was heavy. "You must find the source of the darkness and confront it head-on. Only by facing what you have summoned can you hope to survive." Juma knew that the task ahead of him was dangerous, perhaps even deadly. But he had no choice. The shadows were closing in, and if he didn't act soon, it would be too late. As Juma left Bibi Naima's home, her words echoed in his mind. "You must find the source of the darkness." But where could he begin? The streets of Njiwa, once vibrant and full of life, now felt oppressive, as though the very air was thick with foreboding. His heart raced as he wandered through the city, pondering the old woman's advice. The mark on his arm burned like a branding iron, each throb a reminder of the price he had paid. What was he up against? Was it the man in the cloak? Or was there something far more sinister lurking in the shadows? That night, Juma resolved to confront his fears. He gathered his courage and returned to the abandoned building, determined to search for answers. The air was heavy with an unsettling energy, and the shadows seemed to writhe around him, eager to envelop him. As he stepped into the dimly lit room, he found the ancient book still open on the table. Its pages rustled, as if beckoning him closer. Juma approached, his fingers trembling as they brushed against the faded ink. It was then he noticed something peculiar. Beneath the text was a faded illustration of a dark figure, cloaked and faceless, standing over a swirling abyss. Suddenly, the air grew colder, and the whispers returned, louder and more urgent. Juma felt a presence behind him, and he turned sharply, expecting to see the man in the cloak. But instead, he found himself face to face with a vision, the spectral figure of a woman, her eyes filled with sorrow and regret. "Juma," she said, her voice barely a whisper, "you must listen. The darkness you seek to confront is not what it seems. It feeds on despair, on the very essence of those who have fallen before you." "What do you mean?" Juma asked, confusion gripping him. "You are not the first to make this bargain," she continued. "There are others, trapped like you, their souls entwined in a web of darkness. You must find them and break the cycle. Only then can you hope to reclaim your life." Before Juma could ask more, the vision faded, leaving him alone with the book and the weight of her words. He realized then that he wasn't fighting just for himself, he was part of something much larger, an endless cycle of despair and darkness. Determined to find the others trapped in the same web of darkness, Juma spent the following days searching for clues. He roamed the city, visiting hidden corners and forgotten places where whispers of the past lingered. He questioned old shopkeepers, spoke to street performers, and even sought out those who claimed to speak with spirits. Many dismissed his inquiries as madness, but one night, while sitting at a small tavern, he met a man named Kito, an old storyteller known for his tales of the supernatural. Juma approached him cautiously, feeling an inexplicable connection to the man. "I've heard you tell stories of spirits and darkness," Juma said, his voice low. "Have you ever heard of those who made a pact with the devil?" Kito's eyes narrowed, and he leaned in closer. "You're looking for answers, aren't you? There are many who have danced with the devil, but few who return unscathed." Juma swallowed hard. "I need to know how to break a pact. How to save myself and others." Kito chuckled, a low, rumbling sound. "Breaking a pact is no easy feat. It requires not just courage, but the willingness to confront your deepest fears. And sometimes, it demands a sacrifice." "What kind of sacrifice?" Juma asked, his heart racing. "Every soul bound by darkness must confront the shadows of their past. You must find the one who holds the key to your release," Kito replied cryptically. "But be warned, what you find may not be what you expect." The storyteller's words weighed heavily on Juma's mind as he left the tavern. He knew he had to find the others, their stories might hold the key to his own escape. But where would he begin? As the sun set over Mjiwa, Juma felt an urgency driving him forward. He decided to visit the old marketplace, a place where lost souls often gathered. The streets were bustling with people, but he felt a profound loneliness as he searched for those who shared his burden. Juma wandered through the maze of stalls, the scent of spices and roasted meat filling the air. He approached a group of young men who seemed to be engaged in a heated discussion. "What's troubling you?" Juma asked, hoping they would share their stories. One of the men, a tall figure named Mwita, looked up, his eyes shadowed with despair. "We are discussing the fate of our friend. He made a deal to gain wealth, and now he's lost in the shadows. We fear for his life." Juma's heart raced. "Do you know where he is?" Mwita shook his head. "He vanished weeks ago. We've searched everywhere, but the darkness has swallowed him whole." Juma felt a surge of determination. "I can help you find him. I've seen the darkness, and I know what we are up against. We can save him together." The group exchanged wary glances, but Mwita nodded. "If you're willing to face the shadows, we'll join you. But know this, there is no guarantee of success. Together, they formed a plan to search for their lost friend, each of them carrying the weight of their own fears and regrets. They agreed to meet under the full moon at the abandoned building where the darkness was strongest. On the night of the full moon, Juma felt a strange energy in the air. The shadows danced around him, beckoning him forward. He arrived at the abandoned building, the eerie silence amplifying his anxiety. Mwita and the others arrived shortly after, their faces pale with fear. As they entered the building, Juma's heart raced. The air was thick with darkness, and the whispers grew louder, swirling around them like a tempest. Juma could feel the mark on his arm pulsing, as if it were aware of their presence. "Stay close," Juma said, trying to sound braver than he felt. "We must stay united against the darkness." The group moved cautiously, their footsteps echoing in the empty room. Suddenly, the temperature dropped, and they felt an icy breeze sweep through the building. Shadows flickered at the edges of their vision, whispering in voices that sent chills down their spines. "Who dares enter my domain?" a voice boomed, reverberating through the walls. Juma stepped forward, his voice steady despite the fear gripping him. "We seek our friend. We will not leave until we find him." The shadows coalesced into a dark figure, the same cloaked man who had first approached Juma. "You are brave, but bravery will not save you. You have opened the door to darkness, and now it comes for you." Mwita shouted, "We will not be afraid. We are here to fight." The figure laughed, a sound that chilled Juma to the bone. "Fight? You are mere children playing in the dark. Your fears will consume you, one by one." As the darkness swirled around them, Juma felt a surge of determination. They had come too far to back down now. "We will face our fears together," he shouted, rallying the group. But as they stood united, a wave of darkness crashed over them, pulling them into the depths of their own nightmares. Will Juma and his friends get pulled into the wave of darkness? The depths of their own nightmares? Join us to find out.